eradicate poverty, I think poverty has a lot of inconveniences. I think if you are poor, you have a lot more time that you need in comparison if you had a little more resources to be able to do a few more things. So I'll give you an example. If you have to come to Westlands for this meeting and you didn't have the money from town, what would you have to do? Walk. Somebody else would probably have to drive. If there's no traffic, they'll get here before you. If we are both going to Mombasa and I don't have the resources and you do, chances are I'll be 8 hours by road, 5 hours on the SGR, and about 25 minutes, is it, on a flight. Usually, the difference between the person with money and the one without, apart from all these things that we are made to feel money is evil for, is convenience. Money buys convenience. It makes you buy a car, a machine. It helps you hire people to help you do some of the work that you would have otherwise have had to do if you didn't have the money. And poverty, in simple terms, is lack of adequate resources that you need to be able to meet your personal needs. Now, absolute poverty is when you have complete lack of resources to meet any of your personal needs, your basic needs, your food, your clothing, your shelter. All right? When I say that poverty is when we have inadequate resources and income, a lot of us are in that category. We do not have adequate up to our standards. So most of the time we find ourselves having to spend more time doing things that we could have outsourced, or having to spend more time doing things that we'd have been able to manage if we had the ability and the capacity to do that. So that makes me very worried because it means we are underestimating the impact of poverty on ourselves, on our physical life, on our spiritual life, on the economy. It means that we are not talking about it enough for us to be worried enough to be forced to find a reason to eradicate poverty. One of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, #1, is to eradicate extreme poverty by 2030. That's what they propose. But you realize we delegate the function of eradicating poverty to the government, to the NGOs, to the faith-based organizations. We have outsourced that part of poverty to other people whom we think should be responsible for eradicating poverty and not on ourselves. Why? Because we think that the poverty does not affect us. We think that it is somebody else's responsibility. Now, I am a doctor by profession, and every day I'm faced with the effects of poverty directly affecting people. So I'll give you a few examples and perhaps try and bring you into my world that sometimes leads me to look for a therapist. And in the end, it's not because things wouldn't have been sorted. It's because we underestimate what poverty looks like in a nutshell. So when you feel unwell and you do not have the money, what happens? You stay home a little longer, right? By the time you come in and you are sent for tests that are very expensive, what happens? You go home and try and fundraise, and then you come back. Disease has progressed. When you finally come and the diagnosis is given and the treatment is very expensive, you go back again and try and get money, and then you come back. So in this time, the disease doesn't care that you couldn't pay for it. The disease just keeps progressing. Now, if this person is the sole breadwinner in the family, it means that they had to decide between if the family will eat or if they will come to hospital. It also means that the other people in that family either have to become serious, if it's the children, they have to get off school and try and do some jobs to be able to feed their siblings and their mother. And it's just, honestly, it's just a mess. But from where I stand, I feel if we stopped thinking it is for other people to sort out the poverty issue, if we saw it as our problem. So maybe you had the money to go to hospital when you got sick. Maybe you could afford the test and the treatment. The people who couldn't afford the treatment finally will come. And in the end, there'll be such a backlog of you. Even you who can afford will also be on the queue. So what will happen, we'll move from the public hospitals, and then we'll overflow, because some people could pay, so we'll overflow to the private health sector, and there will be queues even there. So the average time spent in Nairobi Hospital is 3 hours in the outpatient department, 3 hours in Aga Khan, 3 hours. You are definitely affected by the fact that somebody else could not pay for their treatment when they should have done so. So it becomes a reason for you and I to worry about, because it will affect us whether we like it or not. If we look at governance and politics, a lot of the debate conversation that happened before this session was around, are we foolish or are we not? But sometimes it is not as easily said than done. Sometimes in the desperate thought to try and think things will change, the people who could cause an uprising, to cause people to be accountable, if they rise and speak up, they lose their jobs. Nobody's going to debate about their bread and butter. If you feel, if, for example, you decided that your boss is not good and all of you came together and decided to go on strike, and then they stop paying your salary at the end of the first month, maybe you'll survive another 5 days. After that, you'll go back to work quietly. You will not speak up again. Now you will be bootlicking because you don't want to step on anybody's toes, because that salary is very important to you. A lot of Kenyans cannot go more than a month without pay. And as long as that is the case, it means we do not have adequate resources to meet our personal needs. So we are living in poverty. That's the truth. So what do I think we should do? I think we should speak more often to each other and try and see what is the true impact of poverty to me as an individual first, to my family, to my community, and then to my country. What does me being poor or me living in a state of poverty, how does it affect the way that I make decisions every day? All right? How do I make decisions on education, for example? A lot of public schools right now, most of you wouldn't want to take your children there. A few years ago, they were the schools of choice. Right now, private education is very, very expensive. A lot of children, a lot of parents prefer the private system. So it means it eats into our already depleted resources to try and keep our children in private schools. In retrospect now, I'm thinking, what do we do? Is it all doom? Is it all dark? Are we concerned that our GDP is low? Is it an issue for you and I? It is an issue for you and I. And that is why, as young people, as people who are seated in this room and elsewhere, we have to either work together or be so creative that the ventures that we get into every day are leading towards us making more for ourselves and for our communities. It means that we have to be more aware of what our responsibility is as citizens and as persons in this country towards eradication of poverty. I am 100% a believer of change that is coming. We might not be very sensitive to it because things look a bit dark, but I believe in this room are people who will get up and say enough is enough and decide to light the next candle for somebody else so that this environment becomes better. What poverty also robs from you is the ability to be able to live your life's purpose, because usually what you're passionate in doesn't make money at the beginning. It robs you the things that you'd rather do. For most of us here, most people, not myself, I love my job. But for most people, they end up staying in a job longer than they wanted because this is the one that is paying at this point. Later on, they will jump. But for now, this is where they have to be to meet their needs. Poverty robs you of an ability to express your highest God-given potential. So let's come together. Let's see, what do we do? How do we improve? How do we enter into businesses that are useful for us fast? Let's not lie to each other that we are being extremely passionate and totally disregarding our need to meet our basic needs. But the minute we get our basic needs met, even only the people in this room, you'll be able to start ventures that hire more people and meet their personal needs as well. And then it becomes a snowball effect. Thank you.